Shivaya. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. So the topic that we are now tackling, the one that we are in, could be called the next stage of vichara. The second stage of vichara. What do we mean by the second stage of vichara? The first stage of the vichara is to articulate and distinguish between the two basic entities of the viveka. The whole issue in the study is viveka, because if it was very clearly enunciated between two entities, then it will be a very easy matter. But the strength of the ignorance is that there are two things that are completely mixed up, and you cannot tell which one is which. This is the Srishti of Ishvara. This is how it is. And for some very good reason. It's not as though there are various alternatives and Ishvara chose one versus the other. It's not like that. This is the only way that you can have a Srishti. Really, when you think about this, it's such a very beautiful thing. There is a play. The whole thing is a lila. The whole thing is a play. So in the play, there could be some sukha dukkha. There may be some good things happening and some bad things happening. Just like in any play, because they need to have some tension. Same thing is true for sports. In sports, unless you have some tension, there is no fun. Because supposing I gave you that, I don't know if I told you this story or not, that Swami Dayanandji had given us this story, that you have a person from a village in Tamil Nadu who came to Chennai and he made a lot of money. And he was very fond of soccer. And so he decided he's going to create or buy a soccer club. And so he financed it. He collected, 25, 30 people and got a place to play and all of that. And then there was a big match that he did. And then he invited some of his family members, uncles, friends from his small village in Tamil Nadu to come and watch this as his guests because he's the sponsor. So the play began, and there was a lot of action. It was two balanced team, and it was very difficult to see who was going to win, who was going to lose. There were fouls. A couple of people got hurt. If they fell down, there had to be a doctor that came in to lift them. Then they had a substitute. All the rest of it. And then at the end of 90 minutes, then one of the team won 2-1. And so they all shook hands, and everything was okay. So the owner of this whole thing turned to his uncle and said, "So, what did you think of it? Wasn't it fun?" He says, "It was fun, but I have a question. You said you have a lot of money and you financed everything, didn't you?" So he said, "Yeah, I did that, of course." He said, "I have a question. Could you not have bought 22 balls? Why did they have to fight for a single ball? This is ridiculous. They could all just be doing, so on and so forth." So this fellow said, "Oh my God, this is just amazing." So Swami Dayanandaji also says that unless there is some sukha-dukha, he gave another very nice story. These all come back to me. I'm sorry, I have to just put them everything in this short time that I have. I don't know if I'll have another chance to do it. Swamiji said there was similar to this story, really. There is same idea, that there was a producer of films in Bollywood. And anytime he would review a movie script, it all had some very basic things. There is a man and a woman, and they both fall in love, and they're all going to be very happy. Then the villain comes into the picture. And so he does some things, and then there is a big fight between the hero and the villain, and finally the hero wins, and the movie is over. And there's some dancing and all those kinds of things. So this fellow said, this movie had 80% of it was all tension. It was so much that Gunda guy was really so powerful, he made such bad things for him. But finally it ended well, but there was a lot of tension. So he says, "You know what, I have another idea." So he called a script writer and he says, "Make this story and I'm going to make a movie out of this." The story is this. It starts with a family, two families. It starts with two families, excellent people. They are all dharmic people. They all go to temples and they all have their Ishta Devatas. And they have very good, excellent children. A boy and a girl, though they all do pranams, they touch the feet of the parents, everything was well. And these two families, they're such good friends that they decided that if we have one boy and one girl, we will get them married together. So that's what happened. They had, the children grew up and they married together. And they had grandchildren, and both the families were so happy. It's a common children. And, the children growing up, the mothers were helping everything, and the movie ends. There's no gunda, there's nothing bad, and so on. So he made the whole movie, and he asked his wife that, I've been keeping this as a secret, but I want your advice because she is very smart. She gives him very good advice. So he says, before I actually release it, I think it's going to be very good, but I want your advice. So please come and see it. So she was sitting there and watching the movie. And watching that there's no real plot. It's all happiness, happiness, happiness. She thought there must be something bad at the end. It's very possible. No. Then he says, bye, I'll see you next time. He says, cut that movie. There's not a single person that will come and see it. Don't lose any money on it. This is the Leela, Bhagavan's Leela. There is a lot of tension. There is a lot of sukha dukkha. But do you know what? This is where Ishvara must have thought. So there is two possibilities. One is that the whole life is full of joy, and then it ends in tragedy, you die. This can be one plot. Okay? You have no problems, no health problems, no money problems, no children problem, nothing, no spousal problems. That's actually not possible, but anyway, no problems, everything is okay. And then imagine when you're having a life like this, and then the death comes, which is a tragedy for a person. What kind of a movie is that? It doesn't make any. So really, the only thing to do, which is such a beautiful creation, honestly, when you look at it, is there is a play going on with sukha dukkha, all kinds of problems, this, that, or the other, and then it ends very well. What a srishti! What a beautiful srishti! So in this manner, in this way of looking at things and so on, there are some stages of understanding that one has to do. So the first stage we have now done, which is relatively simple. So there, I didn't complete that thought. So the key of doing this is viveka. A couple of things have gotten mixed up together, which seems to be a srishti, and a vichara based on viveka. That's an important thing to see. So we talked about the importance of vichara, thinking, in analyzing, in dissecting. This is what vichara is. But based on what? Because, sometimes you... So the viveka is a special form of vichara. A general form of vichara can be on any topic, like politics. What is good, and this thing about the Russians invading Ukraine. There's so many viewpoints. There's a Russian viewpoint, so there is some thinking that you have to do, and it's not a resolvable problem. But viveka is very resolvable, because two things have gotten mixed up, and the resolution of those two elements of the thing results in happiness. So the two things that have mixed up is I as a Purusha has gotten mixed up with Prakriti. So the projection is not a problem, but the problem is that I see myself as a limited being as a result of the projection, as we have been studying. So that viveka has to be done. So the first stage of the viveka, the first stage of the vichara in the form of viveka has now been done. We have gone through that, which is the Atma and Anatma have to be not physically separated but mentally separated. So that has been done. And the nature of that vichara was talked about in terms of nature of andhakara and of jnanam, the nature of jnanam. We have done all that. Now the new topic for a very short time is called the second stage of vichara. And what is that? We've already started on that. And what that is that after doing the Atma Anatma Viveka, you have two factors left. One is the Sakshi, the Atma, and the other one is the Sakshya, or the projection that you see. And to meditate on just the Sakshi by eliminating all Anatma from it is very pleasant, very fulfilling. Not totally fulfilling, but very fulfilling. It is there. This is the nature of samadhi. So in a samadhi, the outside world disappears. Only you remain. And it's very pleasant. But this is not the final solution. And it's very obvious why there is not a problem. Obvious that this is not a final solution. Why? Because your status as a jiva has not yet been negated. You are still there. So the experience is either during meditation or after meditation that I am a very fortunate jiva. I am a peaceful jiva. I'm a peaceful human being. I'm very happy. Which is good, excellent. Should we stop there? If you stop there, you're declaring victory before the war is won. It should be a pause. Yes, congratulate yourself, but this is not the final answer. Why not? Because the answer is included in the question, which is that I am a peaceful jiva. This is not the reality. And the reason is that if you are a peaceful jiva, you are still subject to birth and death problems. As the question from Rani was last night, how come these rishis get so angry? The rishis get so angry because they were enjoying their samadhi to such an extent that anything that disturbed it just threw them off the rocker. Not the final solution, as we have been discussing. So therefore, the second stage of vichara is to investigate what is next. What is next after samadhi? And what is next after samadhi, which this is what we will see today in various shlokas, starting with shloka number 42, is Shruti saying, it is not a surprise that samadhi is not the final solution, because let me suggest to you why it is not the final solution, because now you have another factor to deal with, which is outside. You are a sakshi, and then there is something outside to deal with, and you cannot have two sets of reality that make a completion. Because we went through this logic yesterday, and I won't go into details of it, but effectively what it means is, Satyam means completeness, infinity. And there cannot be two Satyams. There cannot be two infinities, if you look at it from a mathematical standpoint. There cannot be two infinities. And anything less than infinity is not tolerated by me. it can be, and what happens is it is tolerated by me to a large extent. Because if I have everything going on well in my life, then I feel I'm okay. I don't need anything else. But then if it is a large number means I have good health, I have good money, my children are happy, spouse is happy, business is going well, everything is okay. This is large. This is subject to change. Subject to change. It cannot last. So this is not infinity. So the infinity is no conditions. I am happy without any conditions. You cannot say, then this is exactly what happens. I remember, I think I've already talked about this, Swami Dayananda used to say, please ask yourself, are you totally happy? As we say, when we meet somebody, how are you doing? He says, I'm doing okay, wonderful. The more you pursue, you find not completely okay. And we want to be completely okay. So anyway, going back to the basics of it, every person wants purnatvam. That's why we chant this so often. Purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva avashishyate. This is a very important shloka, mantra. And very briefly, I'll just tell you, just since we are on that topic, and I'll go back to the main logic that I'm on. So, what it says is, so there are two kinds of Purnam. Two kinds of Purnam. And both the kinds of Purnam is really the same Purnam, but they appear differently. Purnam adaha, Purna idam. That and this. That also is Purnam and this also is Purnam. What do we mean by that? This requires a lot of explanation, so it's almost like a separate class on that. But mainly what it means is a entity without any change is Purnam. And if there are some changes on the entity, that does not disturb the Purnam. So the simple example is that of an ocean. Suppose there is an ocean with no waves whatsoever, like a lake. It's generally not possible because there's always some wind, some disturbance. But suppose there is a water which is not moving at all. So that would be called Purnam. Or you have a situation where there is huge breakers. That is so bad that you can overturn a ship. But there's so many waves. There's nothing quiet about it. It is still Purnam. So the mithya doesn't really disturb the Purnatvam of Satyam. That is what we are trying to figure out exactly how that is. And so, that is the main topic here, is that once I understand that I am the very nature of Purnam, but right now I don't believe that I am the nature of Purnam. Why not? Because we haven't done the second version of our vichara yet. The first version of the vichara is that I appear to be Purnam. So a person in samadhi, this is interesting. When I meet people like Raj, and we have a friend. There's another. His name is Raj also, Raj Krishnan, and he also follows a very very good form of meditation techniques and so on and so forth. So Swami Dayananda used to say that, I remember this so well, he says, you are going to meet people whose meditation techniques are far more advanced than yours and mine. Because we do some normal meditation. Remember the first day that we did that, a little bit of pranayama, a little bit of body control and so on. This is elementary. But the people that really do advanced samadhi, they are far advanced. And it's not as though we don't think that's necessary for us as a Vedantin. Anyway, so the people who are doing samadhi, they feel they are Purnam. But they are Purnam for a while. You cannot say, I had moksha for half hour. You cannot have, this is a abuse of the word moksha. Moksha means for no time, no condition, no conditionality. That is what moksha is. So if you have moksha for half hour, that violates it makes a mockery of the word moksha. So therefore, the sense of completeness has to be complete. That's what Purnatvam is. So the second vichara, which now has begun, deals with this topic. So let's go back to the main topic. So in short, it's a good start that I'm a Sakshi, but now we have to go on to analyze what are the implications of the Atma and Anatma. And we saw that the basic of that is you cannot have two Satyams. You can have multiple mithyas, but the Satyam must be the same. In the analysis of the ocean and in the waves, there's only one water. All perturbations are to that water alone. This is really true in the sense that the Pancha Mahabhutas, as we saw in meditation today, all the 5 elements, they are unique. Unique in the sense, anywhere in the whole world, whole, not just this world, but universe. You go to, when we do these explorations, the water that you find is the same water that you have here. Only one water. One space is very easy to understand, one space. But the 5 elements are called Pancha Mahabhutas because they are all unique, each one of them. Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Apaha, Prithvi. And so each one of them can be the only Satyam. That's also a relative Satyam. It's not a complete Satyam, but even at the relative level, there's only one Satyam. You cannot have 2 Satyams. So therefore, if I consider myself as the Sakshi, and I consider the world as something which I'm seeing, we need to resolve, is the Satyatvam of the world and the Satyatvam of the Atma, how can 2 Satyams exist? So therefore, we can now logically, reasonably conclude one of them must be Satyam and the other one is Mithya. And we know the definition of Mithya. So then the question becomes, the third one is, if one of them is Satyam and the other one is Mithya, which one is Satyam and which one is Mithya? So there also we saw, very, very quickly revising, one which is always there is the Satyam, one which comes and goes is the Mithya. The water is always there, the waviness comes and goes. What is always there? the Atma. Not me as a human being, but me as the Atma. The human being is also a human being, the human beingness. The body, the mind, the sense organs, tendencies, memories, hopes, everything is all part of what? Anatma. As we saw in meditation today, that really speaking, my waking status is also a modification of Panchamahabhutas. Panchamahabhutas are the basis of the projection, Anatma. They are part of the abhasa. They are like thoughts, waves, which come and go, continuous flow, all on the Atma. So it is very clear that if you have to do one satyam and one mithya, logically, reasonably, experientially, Atma is the satyam, Anatma is the mithya. This is the core of the vichara of the second type. This is the whole flow of some next few verses is to substantiate this fact. And this cannot be done until the original viveka has been completed. Because then you can take a rest and say, okay, I worked hard and I've got to figure out what is ajnanam, what is knowledge, and so on. You come to the point that there is only two factors left, not multiple factors, Atma and Anatma. Then you now embark on an analysis of, can there be two satyams? And Shruti points out that no. See, this is interesting. This is an important thing to see, that Shruti does not prevent logic to take over your mind. In fact, it needs you to be logical. But it says, can you please follow the logic that I suggest to you? Don't do it independently. If you do it independently, then you come up with some ideas that, science knows what it's doing. This is the funny part. The funny part is that for some people, science is very precise, but religion is all mumbo jumbo. I don't know what all this Vedanta, etc. is. I have no idea. But science, they can predict. You know what the reality is? Vedanta is the real science, and the so-called science is all mumbo jumbo. This is the situation. But you cannot come to that conclusion until you study it. You have to examine it. What is it why are we saying that? So therefore, the Shruti says, as we have said, this is an important thing to see, that we have to go through three factors in order to free myself. Shruti, Yukti and Anubhava. Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava. Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava. So what that means is, don't abandon logic. Logic is very important. Reasonableness is very important. But the logic has to be seen as suggested by the Shastra. Independent logic gets into a problem. Independent logic means what? Independent logic means some kind of a logic. You know, there is no God. Why do you feel there is no God? Because I don't see it. This is called independent logic. If God was here, or another logic is, if God was here, all these terrorists and all these criminals that have multiple machine guns and they kill innocent children, that would not happen. What kind of a God is there that is allowing? This is independent logic, not Shruti supported logic. So the Shruti says basically that please be reasonable, please be logical, but think along these lines. Then you will reach the truth about it. So here the Shruti is pointing out, yes, it does appear to be just Atma and Anatma, but think some more. There cannot be only one Satyam, and one of them has to be Mithya. Think about it. So this is the progression that we are going to look at. So having spent that time, I'm going to go a little bit faster in pointing out. Let's see. So in verses 42, 43, several things are talked about. One thing that Swami Akhandananda points out here, which we have already talked about, but I'll repeat it here, which is the nature of what is called your own thinking and the truth that you seek. Something similar to what we just went through, which is independent logic versus Shruti-sanctioned logic. Another way to look at that is that one can be karta-tantram and one is vastu-tantram. And so here, I think that example which is given by the rope snake example is very good. It's excellent. So, if there is a mistakenly taking the rope to be not rope, that has lots of possibilities, depending upon your previous exposure. So if you make a mistake, you don't see the rope as a rope. Suppose you have never seen a snake, then you won't mistake it for a snake. Supposing you are a gardener and you are dealing with water hoses all the time. You know, you leave one hose for watering this garden, then this is what happens to us. These hoses, they have a limited life. And so they go bad. And so you keep on getting new hoses from Costco and so on. And so you're dealing with hoses all the time. So if you mistake a rope, you know what you're going to mistake it for? A hose. If you're dealing with garlands all the time, you know, like the garlands we do for our murtis, then your imagination will be based on garlands. Or if streak of water. So what you mistake it for, it can all be different. So this is what is called karta-tantram. This is an interesting thing to see. And what we see is that people's view of who God is can all be very different. People's view of what life is all about, what makes it successful, what makes you happy, are all different. All different. Based on your original samskaras or vasanas. How you brought up, what education you got, all those kinds of, there's so many variations of that. But all those variations give rise to the variations of your interpretation. But knowledge is not vastu tantram. Abhasa is Abhasa is karta tantram. See? So your Abhasa, you know what Abhasa is. Abhasa is your particular way of thinking, your interpretation. It's called Abhasa. So the Abhasa is Kartitantram, based on your own samskaras, your background and so on. All different, totally different. But Jnanam is not Kartatantram. It is Vastutantram. Vastutantram means that the real knowledge of this thing that people are misinterpreting does not depend on how you look at it. It has to be exactly as the Vastu is. This is what is called Vastutantram. So you have to see the rope exactly as rope, nothing else. So similarly, we have different interpretations of who I am. What am I doing? What's happening to me? What my future is? Everybody has a slight. We have a lot of commonality based on our experiences, but still there is lots of variation. But none of them can be until you see the Vastu as it is. You cannot be Kartatantram. It has to be Vastutantram. And Vastutantram is very difficult to see because you don't have the means to seeing it, except for the pramana of the Shastra. Shastra pramana says, my God, do you know who you are? You are you're not just the Jivatma, you are the Paramatma. There's no difference between them. Completely, as we will see in some logical statements, hopefully I'll come to that very quickly. Okay, so this is the stage of vichara that we do. I'm going to have to skip some of this. So just to one or two things before I go to some description of the identity or the reality of the self. So here, I'm just pointing it out in terms of the verses. You will see it when you read it on your own. So even within the Hindus themselves, there are a lot of variations. So, for example, there is a sect, not a sect, but a school of thought called Nayayika. Nayayika is the more advanced form of what is called science. So the advanced form of science means that they have analyzed the content of the world to a very large degree. And so what they say is, this is why they're different from Vedantins. They say different from Vedantins. So what they say is that there is in fact a pervader and a pervaded. So this is where they recognize Ishvara, they recognize Jiva, but they maintain some difference in their identity. How? They say that Ishvara is the pervader and the Jiva is the pervaded. The example is a iron ball placed in red hot fire. So you have a cold iron ball which is dark in color, and you put that into a blazing fire for a while. What will happen is that this cold black ball will turn into fiery red ball. And the phenomena here is what is called pervader pervaded. So the fire is the pervader and the ball is the pervaded. And similarly to this is the cause and effect. Ishvara is the cause and Jiva is the effect. Similar to that. But in case just for sake of time, I'll just keep it with the pervader and pervaded. Vedanta says no. This is not how it works. Then how do it works? It is something similar to that, but not exactly this. What do you mean by that? So Vedanta says it is like total space and room space. It is not fire and iron. Because in the fire and iron, their constituents are totally different. Because in an iron, Prithvi is Prathama and everything else is secondary. Whereas in fire, Agni is Prathama and everything else is secondary. They all have some mixture. But the pervaded and pervader are different entities. Advaita Vedanta says no. It is exactly like, yes, there is some perceived differences. We grant that. Otherwise we will not be even sitting here studying, so on and so forth. So there is a perceived difference, but the perception of the difference is much more like something which is the same, but you are enclosing it with a false upadhi. You are still the Chidatma, Chidakasha rather, Chidakasha. Same Chidakasha outside, same Chidakasha inside. In one case you are looking at it as a room space, in the other case you are looking at the total space. So there is total identity, only the difference is you have some mixed up thinking. That's all that you need to figure out. This is how the Vedantic thinking is, how the suggestion is. So this one concludes, I think it will be given in verse number 46 description, that the status of Ishvara and the status of Jiva is basically false. It is there until you investigate it further. So exactly the same issue as the room space and the total space. So there is a upadhi, which is the walls, which is falsely enclosing the space. The space cannot be, this is not possible for it to be enclosed. It encloses everything, but nothing encloses the space. So therefore, my feeling that there is an outside Ishvara, and I am just a Jiva, is only from the standpoint of the upadhi. What is my upadhi? My upadhi is that I have a feeling that I am just a human being. That is the upadhi. And as long as you continue to feel you are a human being only, there will be a separate Ishvara. But if you come to understand that the basis of both Ishvara and the Jiva, like the space, is the same, which is Brahman, which is Satyam Jnanam Anantam, Satchidanandam, then the separate status of Ishvara and the separate status of Jiva disappears. So this is how the logic and the explanation progresses. So in the short time, I need more than 5 minutes. So I think I'll postpone this one very important, it's almost like meditation for this. So what I'm going to do is to postpone that until the next class, but let me see if there are some other things that I can fit in. Yeah, so let me do this. I'm going to jump over to the content of the verses number 47 and 48. 47 and 48. So there it says that, so 47, 48 say that this is actually the view of the Shruti. Shruti is the word of the Lord, of God. And so it's not as though this is a speculation. So this is not part of Yukti alone, it is part of Shruti. So there it says, Neha Nanasti Kinchana. It says that there is no plurality. Eventually the final answer is there is no plurality. Just like in a dream you have a feeling of plurality, but in reality there is no plurality. That's interesting, those are my words. In reality there is no plurality. That's a good thing. I'm going to make a patent out of it. I don't think any of the Mahatmas have told me this. This is really the only uniqueness that I have. There is no plurality in reality. So this is what the Shruti is saying, number 47. And it is also saying in number 48 that it is not just theoretical. It says that if you continue to see plurality, you're causing problems for yourself. My dear, please abandon it as quickly as you can, because mrityoha saha mrityum apnoti, the one who sees plurality is inviting death. Is inviting death. It's interesting. I'm just going to wrap up and not go to the main logic. So, the Mahatmas say that our estimation of death is misplaced. We think that the death of the body is my death. This is how we think. The reality of the matter is we are dying every second. And we will keep on dying every second, millisecond, even after we die. So the death of the body is not the real, there's no real death. There's no real death anyway. But please see the fact that you are continuously dying. What do you mean by I'm continuously dying? I'm not dying, I'm sitting here. You are dying because you don't see the reality. You are dying because you are rejecting the Satyam. I am just a small changing person. You are creating death for yourself continuously. That is what the Acharyas say is the real tragedy. And then of course, you are very sure, not you personally, but we are all very sure this is what life is about. I'm just taking myself to be a human being. You are continuously dying even after you take the next birth. Continuously dying. And animals and small children need to be forgiven. They have no choice in the matter. A child does not have developed mind enough. See, the child is also like an animal. The animals throughout the life cannot really do any vichara. But a young child cannot only do any vichara for a short time until it grows up. Then it is capable of doing vichara. The tragedy is that we still don't do vichara. So, in verse number 48, to wind it up, it says, don't say that this is just no, that's okay. You're inviting death. Mrityoho saha mrityum apnoti. Nana eva pashyati. The one who goes into plurality is inviting death. Don't do that, please. So anyway, we'll close the class at this point and we'll resume it at 11 o'clock with a little bit more explanation, more insight into the truth of the Atma. You'll find it interesting. So we'll see you then. I always end with a advertisement for the next class. This is what our Mahatmas all say, do the same thing, just to make sure that you come to the class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Warmed up? Can we go for a walk? You think warm enough for doing that?